Hello, everyone. Welcome again. I'm your host or one of your hosts. Let me introduce A'HaRa. My name is Alisha Braché here at Cosmic Gateway, and we are back for round three of frequency jump. So, this might interweave a couple of different topics, but they're all, as you'll find. So, if we jump around, please bear with us. But you'll find that how interwoven or interconnected these topics that we're starting to bring to light are and how relevant they will become more apparent for people's individualized experience as we're moving in through this frequency threshold that is upon us right now. So, welcome back, A'HaRa. Thank you for being here and chatting and bringing all these quirky, perhaps mind expanding topics to all the wonderful people who are tuning in. So, thank you all for being here.
Hi, everyone. I feel like when you said round three, I just got this image of us going back into the boxing ring of like, what are we going to uncover now? Um, yeah, because it feels a little bit like that because when we started the series, we didn't really know where it was going, but now it's going into some really substantial territory. And so um, we thought we should frame this conversation with a little bit more personal info about both of us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's coming up, which I'm seeing across the board, a lot of people are talking about in this particular terminology. So, we've got many different types of terminology of the space that we're sort of co-creating and working as a collective to move into. But the golden age and the reference to the golden frequency is very apparent. Um, it I mean, it's always been around, but it feels like that particular terminology is being highlighted. And we both had very individualized personal experiences with connecting with that golden frequency, the time that it has existed previously, and what we're regenerating or bringing back aspects of that back into experience as we're moving forward. So I guess I'll hand it over to you. And if you can maybe talk about giving some context or personal experience of when you kind of came into the gold frequency and what that means for you personally.
Mm. Well, I just noticed that my backdrop is uh,
The
has a
dawning
golden
of
theme to it today, so that's no mistake, obviously. Um, I live in Alice Springs, which is in the central desert of Australia, right in the center of this country. And the energy here, and this is where Uluru is, which is also known as Ayers Rock, a huge monolith in the middle of nowhere. And it basically is like an amplifier of the golden frequency. That's been my experience since I got called to the desert 6 years ago. I flew here on a one-way ticket. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have anywhere to live. I knew nothing. I was just following the signs, and the signs were very clear that I needed to come here. 6 years later, I'm still here. And part of the reason is because I see this land as kind of like the golden fountain
mm,
of the entire country. So it's this replenishable energy that comes up through the ground, and Uluru is part of that. So that's why so many people from all over the world are called there. I mean, some people refer to it as the solar plexus chakra. Other people, I sort of see it more as the heart chakra, especially of this country. It's the heart of this country. But it's actually both. To me, it's a blend of the two. It's a fire heart energy here. So, yes, solar plexus identity gets questioned. Everyone who comes here gets blown apart, basically. Anything that is not true gets stripped back to your raw essence. And that's what the landscape represents because it's raw rock and there is not much buffering of the landscape, as you can see behind me. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because this really was my awakening into the golden frequency 6 years ago. And it has been wild ever since then. So many things have happened as a result of that cellular remembering, is how I would put it, in my body. And I see certain people who have what I call them golden bodies, people who are walking with this golden frequency, who have the DNA memory of being alive during another time where we lived in that frequency. And the bodies were very different. This is ancient, like we're talking, you know, forget about linear time. I shouldn't even say ancient, but a long time away from this time. Let's put it that way. So when the gold came through, it sounds, and this kind of frames the conversation today, is that the gold sounds like, ooh, cool, the golden age, utopia, we're all going to live in harmony once again, and all of those things are true. But what I've learned through the baptism of fire, I would say, is that the gold brings the void, which is total darkness alongside it. And you have to work with that darkness in order to balance the golden frequency in yourself. And so I've come up against my trauma, very intense trauma, suppressed trauma, ancestral trauma, all sorts of stuff that's been stored in my body as a result of waking up the gold. So it's not easy street. It's certainly not, I wouldn't even call it utopian. It's dystopian as well. It's both. It's like, if you imagine the depths of hell, through the depths of hell, the gold rises. And so that's been my personal experience. And
Reminds me of alchemy.
yeah, alchemy. Alchemy is titrated with the black, the gold, the dark. And so just to frame that in terms of my life personally, I think when I really cracked my golden body about 2 years ago, I became very ill, and I spent most of 2 years in bed, experiencing, trying to clear trauma out of my body, a lot of old memories surfacing. And it's been very challenging. So it started with an emotional breakdown. So when that gold really started to pump through my body, my fear went off the Richter scale. So they go hand in hand. So when we're talking about the golden age, yeah, it's like really important to be realistic about what that means, because I think when people really open the vault, there can be a rude shock in there. And that's all I'll say for now.
Thank you. I guess you're giving me a reflection piece of when I first came into contact with that frequency, what it meant for me, and the ebbs and flows of the weaving component. I'm just trying to think. I think it was 2008. So is that about 6 years ago? I don't know. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, we're looking at that came in with many memories resurfacing, specifically around what felt, and I couldn't attest to this, but what felt in terms of the imagery was very Egyptian-esque like, and sort of opening the door to the most expansive state that I've ever witnessed in my field. It was almost like, I kind of laugh about it now because it hit me out of nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere. And it was so enormous that I couldn't even function my body because I was so light and floating. But straight away, there was a lot of darkness that came in around that. And I find that often in this experience, and you can look at it from many ways of clearing our own traumas, wounds. But I think when we also hit a certain energetic threshold, alarm bells perhaps go off, and there's a lot of beings that are very interested in coming in close and examining or wanting a taste of that very pure frequency. And so I feel like it's been this incremental ebb and flow because ever since I had the first taste of that, I think I've had expanded versions of that maybe 5 times since, and maybe on average, once a year. Um, and really going into very, very heightened states. But then it comes with the dipping and the clearing that occurs. And I think that's where, when you hit that, at least from my own experience, when I've been able to hit that threshold and really open the doors to that gold frequency that resides within me, that memory from that time, and the infinite possibilities that come through that, through gifts and abilities and pure creational energy. Um, it's always met with a lot of, yeah, darker energies, beings. We're talking about snake beings, we're talking about spider beings, and we may even go into this realm of these new kids on the block, as you coined it the other day. We haven't got a specific terminology around that, but this sort of AI robotic being that seems to be not many people that I've met. I've only encountered a very small handful of people who have had encounters with these beings. And the last time I opened up into that golden frequency, I certainly had my own encounter. So yeah.
Yes, I sort of see it as an initiation. So we don't get into the gold, we don't get access to the gold without serious initiations along the way. And I feel like humanity, there's an invitation at least for humanity to enter the golden gates, but it's not going to come easily.
Mm.
And only those who can handle the whole truth will make it through. And I know that sounds dramatic, it sounds like a sci-fi movie, but it kind of is. Because the reality is most people don't want to leave the comfort reality that the simulation, or whatever you want to call this reality, has provided. And it's about to provide lots and lots of other comforts through technology. No, people won't have to work anymore. There'll be universal income. You won't have to do all sorts of things that you didn't want to do before. And that's highly alluring. So, what is going to distinguish people who are ready to move through the gates is how uncomfortable are you prepared to get in your own skin?
Mm. Mm.
Because the allure of the comforts that are going to be sold to us, get ready for this, are going to be off the chain. Comforts that we never, ever would have imagined in our wildest dreams. And it's going to seem really easy. And we touched on this. Oh, I think we touched on this, in the first video around pathogenesis and self-conceiving, is that they're going to sell wombs to us, artificial wombs. Oh, you can incubate your baby with the best DNA possible. We'll splice the DNA, yours and your partner's, or wherever it comes from, and we'll give you a baby that has no disease and no this and no that and all the skills and intelligence you could want. And we just incubate it in an artificial womb, so you don't do any trauma to your body. There's no risk, and everything's controlled, basically. So that's an example of what I'm saying, is the convenience and the comforts that are coming are going to distinguish those people who can really stand in this frequency.
As you're
say so much
sharing
more.
that, I get very distinctive kind of splitting of frequency bandwidths or realities. And
Yeah.
those that have perhaps been on their expansion journeys, for lack of a better word, have been in the depths of the uncomfortable and potentially know the risks. Whereas I think this is getting to a crescendo of humanity being faced with that and then making the choice. Am
Yes.
I? Yeah.
Yes. And like I said, the new kids on the block, and this is just one of them that I had a preview of several years ago, but they're coming through now. in greater numbers, and that will continue as more gold gets released in the bodies and in the planet, in the actual earth, and at the same time as more tech gets released and the AI becomes more prevalent and a conscious choice or option that people take. But that brings up a whole other question mark around, are we already in an AI reality with AI inside our bodies, which is how we're hooked up to this controlled perceptive place. So we don't have to go down that rabbit hole right now, but I think it's warrants being mentioned, is that we, I believe, are already to some degree have AI or tech inside us that has kept us in this controlled state. We're releasing that now, but a lot of tech that's going to be adopted is going to be a conscious choice instead of sort of just what's been bred into us, so to speak. So this is really the split in humanity, the bifurcation of where are you really going and what are you prepared to risk in yourself and also face in terms of the truth. And then there's huge liberation on the other side of that, but it can get really tight, like you're going through a cave or a tunnel that seems to have no end. And if you're willing to do that, awesome.
Maybe we can give voice to some of the things that we've kind of been speaking about off camera around what are some of the initiation phases that come up in reactivating, I guess is probably a good way to term it, is reactivating the gold frequency within our cellular structure, because I think a lot of people here come from that time or have had that experience, are connected to that to some degree, but I think there's a lot of trauma that is also associated with that. And I can speak from my own experience that many of the times the activations that have come through with the gold frequency have been around frequency specific partners or matches, being in connection or proximity or through a shared experience can really activate that. But the other things that come up in and around, because we were talking about also this way of building and working with opening up to, I think everyone desires that, is like-minded conscious community where people can live in co-creation and collaboration. But from my experience, and so many can, speak to this, is we haven't been really able to stabilize that. Like so many attempts and it falls apart. People
Ooh,
try,
yeah.
try again.
Yeah.
And really what is underneath being able to build these communities or harmonize and sync in a frequency specific couple that are here to bring in the new?
That is such a good question, because a lot of people do hold this vision in their hearts of living in a community. They know that's the way forward, and that's true, because the living in community represents unification, and the unity consciousness is what we need to be able to move into the gold. So I think this comes down to one thing that I witness again and again. I've seen it in myself, I've seen it around me, happening in all directions, is when I say, how much of the truth can you handle? I mean really personal truths. Often people think, it means the truth of this reality or the collective truth or the lies that the government's told us and all this stuff. No, the truth that we all need to face is in our own household, our own families, and who's in our bed. This is the hard truths that people have to face. And oftentimes, like we spoke about last video or the first one about the frequency matches and how people have coupled up with people who are not of the same frequency and perhaps are pulling them down or pulling them off course, is probably a better way of describing it, with what their higher calling is and their higher potential is in this reality. And so when people couple up with someone, I often find someone very wise said to me many years ago, you marry your shadow.
Mm.
And in the 3D, that is true. So you marry into, whether it's marriage or not, you choose a partner that is going to reflect to you the things you don't want to embrace or see in yourself. Of course, there's a lot that you do want to see, and that's on the surface, but behind that is a shadow. So we're moving out of that where the invitation is completely different. We're moving into a direct mirroring of us in another. And that's what the frequency match is. That's what distinguishes it. So there isn't a shadow with a direct mirror because you've faced your own shadow. So have they. So all you get is double power.
Mm.
A direct mirroring of your frequency match means double power because there's no shadow or wounding that is going to detract from that power. But what most people have done, and we've all done it, is we've chosen partners who reflect our wounding. And that's actually a very strong pull between people. And of course, there's a gift in that because you resolve your wounding a lot of the time through relationships. But the golden frequency means there is no wounding. The wounding has been resolved, and you can then double your power with your chosen mate or partners or collaborators, whatever it is. So I think that is the distinguishing thing, because when people are choosing their communities, they're not necessarily choosing people by their frequency. They're choosing who else wants to live in community, who else lives in my town, who else, who else have I known for 10, 20 years? They're choosing on all these other grounds, but the most important thing is, are they in the same frequency band? And the reason that is important is that when you choose people in your same frequency band, your access to the template of the golden age is heightened. They will add to whatever you're bringing to expand the picture and to ground that template moving forward in that community, which means the community is going to look totally different to necessarily a bunch of people who come together to go, let's live off grid and milk the cows and grow the veggies. What I'm talking about by comparison is if you join with your frequency mates and live in frequency domes, your need for food is less. You're more likely to come closer to being breatharian because you're living off frequency of those in your environment because they're compatible with you. So there's like all these things that go into the mix, but essentially it's about frequency.
Mhm.
That's my take.
Yeah, and
What do you think?
well, I like what you said about living off the energy. I can attest to that because every time I've been engulfed in that golden frequency, the need for food
Mm.
diminishes significantly. And so, yeah, when the frequency is high, I can see how we're sustained by light and energy and less by food. Um, but also, I think one of the things that I want to touch on as well is the wounding that can come up in the frequency specific matches or group dynamics. And I think,
Mm.
yeah, a very painful part of the process that a lot of people don't want to go there because it may not even be on a conscious recognition, but the demise of these civilizations that has happened time and time again in this repetitive cycle of being able to have these beautiful communities that are working in unity consciousness for the greater good. And then the darkness seeps in and breaks that up. Um, the core wounding of losing everything.
Mm. Yep. That's the wall that we both hit when we started talking about the golden age. We went, oh, why are we chasing the golden age when every other time in living memory or cellular memory, it's all blown up? it never gets sustained. So what's the point? And
Mm.
that came the wound of the loss and then the manifestation of that, which is, well, what's the point? So even though we're talking about all this great stuff, we've done it before. It's not new. We're drawing on that existing knowledge somewhere in the field in other timelines. But so what's the point of achieving it again if it's all going to be taken away? So we sat in that wound, didn't we?
Oh yeah, that was fun.
Um, and it wasn't unfamiliar to either of us. We've been there before, but it's what sort of came through was it's one of those impossible scenarios of is there really a resolution to that, or we just have to sit in the acceptance of it may all be lost once again.
And I think we were talking about the possibility of moving out of that repetitious cycle and the possibility of where we're heading in to be able to recreate something that has merged polarities of darkness and light. I think I was talking about from my own soul's experience of working so much. Every time I come or hit a wall or come into a connection, the deeper questions that I ask myself is, what is the origins? Where does this stem from? What is the purpose? And what are some of the wounding that needs to be reconciled to come into harmonious balance? And I feel like I've been through that process so many times, um, to be able to have a greater understanding of my own soul's existence and where I've come from and the experiences that I've had. My my oldest memory seems to be one that is connected to Lyra. And I feel like that in this universe was probably the first time where the darkness descended upon it. And it feels like there has been this copy and paste repetitious throughout various societies, not just here on Earth, but in other planetary bodies as well. And so my desire is being able to exit out of that loop and then have still retain the knowledge, but not having the wound so that it doesn't have to be repeated again. But, we could get so far. I pondered on this after that conversation of like, yeah, but then you immerse yourself in that experience for how long? And then maybe we get bored and we want to challenge again. So, who knows what can come after that. But just to know that that could be a possibility of being able to step out of that loop inside.
And this is where we talked about moving to a different harmonic universe
Mm.
because our living memory in this universe, at the frame of this universe, is creation destruction, which is why we keep going through these loops. But in another universe, does that exist? Because if we're questioning the point of that now, there must be something else. So if we are able to stand in the center of creation and destruction, then can we move through and make a bridge to another harmonic universe where those two polarities are not required?
Mm.
So in this universe, it's kind of a law, it would seem, that in order to create something new, the old has to be destroyed.
Mm.
That's the accepted truth. It certainly is in this reality. But in another harmonic universe, is that true?
I would say anything is possible.
Mm.
Mm.
However, maybe, and this is an insight that you gave me that I didn't have about these AI beings, is that they're coming from another galaxy. Now, a galaxy is still technically within this universe, right? But maybe they're not. I don't know, because I can't speak to the next or another harmonic universe, or maybe I can and I just haven't tapped into it yet. But the question is, or the thing that we both know from our experience, is that these AI beings are coming from very, very far away.
Mm.
And they've created some sort of portal or wormhole to come into this reality because the one thing that they want is the gold. Mm. And what I see in humanity right now, the analogy that I keep seeing, because I can't find a better one, is in the ocean when you have two currents that collide. So the currents are coming from different directions and they meet. What happens is this huge swarm of fish, they all get caught up and swept up in the meeting of the two currents. And what happens then? The predators come. All the sharks and the predatory fish come in and have an absolute field day because they're all in one place. They're all a bit discombobulated because the currents have collided. So they don't really know what the new current direction is, right? So they all just come and take advantage of that. And it feels very similar right now in humanity. And I think we're not even really, we're certainly not halfway through the process. We're not even close to that, I think, right now. We're about to see the chaos of that unfolding in front of our own eyes. And a lot of that may be in the psyche, in the human psyche. So it may not be physical chaos in terms of a war in your town or anything like that, anything dramatic like that. It can just be mental chaos and not being able to find any barometer for our focus. What's the truth? And so I think that's what's about to unfold. And the best preparation we can have for that is being really connected to the body, really grounded, surrounded by frequency people as much as possible, and speaking truth, expressing truth, facing truth, becoming really open and acquainted with the whole truth of all of this. And in that is going to be fear. So, yeah, that's where I see the juncture that we're.
And I can feel into that because I've noticed the ebb and flow of the energies of current for me in my own experience of feeling very grounded, very present, very like clear on the focal point or trajectory. And then that's followed by many days of feeling very discombobulated. So there's like this unthreading and rethreading phase or process that I feel like I'm currently in, where this weird time dilations of not really knowing what even year it is, to be honest, and then having to go, oh, okay, this is where I'm at, because everything feels like it's, and it just feels like there's so many timelines in flux. And then when we go through that, people who aren't aware of that, it's like there's nothing to hold on to. It's just being put it out at sea or in this kind of whirlwind type energetic experience. One of the things that comes to mind is, being around frequency specific people is always really helpful. But let's talk to the people, because I know through my clients, most people don't have that in their life. So what are some things that people can do besides calling it in? I think we spoke about that in the last episode. What can you do if you don't have that point of call in your physical location or surrounding or in your life at all?
Great question. The number one thing that I see and have experienced is you got to loosen up your attachment to the people who are not frequency in your frequency band. I don't mean closing them out of your life. I don't mean, anything like that. I just mean loosen your attachments to make space for the frequency people. So people can call the frequency people in all they like, but they're not going to come if your life is chockers with your attachments to people who are not going in that same trajectory. So I find that is the most important thing, and certainly is another initiation that I, for one, had to go through. And now my life is 90% full of frequency people. So it's not about having absolution, but it's about choosing where your focus is. And the rest kind of takes care of itself. People find, the more you release people who are not on that same pathway, I guess, will find theirs. will find their people in their band, and then everyone, it works out better for everyone in the end. So you don't have to manage the process. You just have to choose where your focus and your energy is going, and being discerning. Like I said, there's people who are high frequency beings who have infiltrators in their bed. That's the hard truth. Or their business collaborators, or even family members. It's very hard to digest that. And when I say infiltrators, I mean beings who have not necessarily an extremely malicious intent, but are certainly derailing or sabotaging in some way, and siphoning energy away from you. But it's up to you whether you actually see that and then say no to it. And when you say no, your life can seriously unravel, your 3D life. It might mean you lose your house. It might mean you don't talk to your family. It doesn't necessarily mean that, but you have to be prepared for the risk of that. And that's what I find is really tough for us as humans, and especially the programming out there, which is about, loving everyone and having an open heart. And I have totally been hammered and smashed on this one, that you cannot have an open heart to everyone, because a lot of people will just take what they can and they will annihilate you because it's on offer. Your energy is on offer. So you have to close the door and be more discerning around that. So these are just some of the initiations, I think, that come with this frequency, and it's fucking hardcore sometimes, really painful.
How would you identify if you had, what did you call it, an infiltrator in your bed or in your life? Let's broaden that. Because I feel like they can be so unassuming,
Oh, yeah.
um, until you're ready to see it, um, open or expand your awareness to it. What
So,
would you,
yeah.
yeah.
Let's just talk about some of the different energetic constitutions for a minute, because someone who has a golden frequency, for example, has a very strong energetic constitution. So when you take the body away, the energy still stands. Stands, like it has a core, it is upright. But a lot of infiltrators, not all, but a lot of them don't have a constitution, don't have a core. They're like, if you imagine a slug or a cocoon of mush, or they don't have any skeletal structure to uphold their constitution. So what do? They're like leeches. They're looking for someone who has a constitution that they can have structure and live off, because they don't have it themselves. So that's limiting everyone, right? Because it limits them because they don't evolve beyond that. And it limits the person who has the constitution because they've got this parasite living off them every day. So that's just one thing, is to take away the body. And this, of course, requires activation of sight. Tough shit when it's family members or, yeah, your partner's really close to you. Take away the body and ask to be shown the truth of that energetic being. And you have to be able to be open to the truth of that, and then process what that means in your 3D life. Taking the steps in some cases. Sometimes no steps are required. Just seeing it is enough to make the changes. But often it's a 3D no that is required. I'm done with this dynamic.
Sometimes it is not easy to do, depending on the nature of the connection.
No way. And this is what I mean. We don't get to the golden age without serious, hardcore initiations that will galvanize us to the core, that require us to basically be prepared to lose everything, including the truth of our loved ones, the ideal that we have about who they are or what they are. And sometimes those ideals can be held for many, many years, and it's big to shake that up.
I'm going to switch lanes just a little bit here. When was the last time you tapped into the golden frequency that you can remember? What was your experience around that?
It's pretty much a daily occurrence for me now, but I find it is heightened when I meet other golden beings.
Yep.
And when I say daily experience, it's constant. I feel like my body is constantly having to calibrate to holding more of that. So when I say it's a daily occurrence, it often means that I'm in an opening phase, and that's when I can see my body turn to plasma sometimes. Other times I see rainbow frequency moving through my body. But definitely when my body turns to plasma, I know that I'm going through another threshold of being able to hold the gold in my physicality. However, it wasn't always a daily experience. It would come in, I guess, periods where it was heightened.
Mm-hmm.
But I sort of feel like it's important to mention here, and we talked about this with the wound, the core wound in humanity around the golden age, is the numbness. We've all gone numb. We are all living in numbness to varying degrees, and the most numb is the heart. Because to live in this society, in the separation of this society, and away from unity consciousness, which is the golden age, the heart has to numb itself. And so we're coming out of that, and that can be painful in itself, but also amazing to feel the full expansion of the heart. And I'm not saying it's only the heart, but certainly that is the universal thing that we all have in us that represents unity. And yeah, that numbness has to dissolve. And that's what has been really perpetuated in the field, is around keeping the numbness in place through technology and through all different things, immunizations, prescription drugs, schooling, even like 3D schooling, just using screens every day, all of these things, let alone what's going on in the atmosphere or the satellites everywhere in the sky, is to keep the numbness there. So the level of fire that is required to dissolve the numbers is intense. And this is another initiation again, and it's ongoing, is how hot and on fire can you become as in your human body? Because that is what is going to neutralize any numbing effect and any technology implants that they try and put in or that are already in you. That's your antidote.
So many things are popping into my head as you're talking, and they're not necessarily directly related, but when you were talking about how you can experience the gold frequency on a daily basis in different forms and facets, this transformation of the activation of the light body, the rainbow body, it feels like the gold frequency is the solidifier in physical form. Would you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bingo. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're going through these layers of recalibration to activate the energetics of our light body, our rainbow body, which I believe is then this is my personal understanding, is being able to activate all the different threads and facets of our multidimensionality into one form, if you will, one consciousness energy frequency. The gold then enables the solidification of physicality that holds it in place, I guess.
Brilliant. I'm so glad you brought this up, because there is so much of this in the spiritual cosmic community about bring in more light. Oh, I'm radiating blue light. I'm this, I'm rainbow colors, I'm that. I'm like, no, it's not real until it's in the body and it's embodied and it becomes material. because gold as an element is from the ground, it's from the earth.
Mhm.
So it is a material frequency. So we have to become that. It doesn't matter how much light you have in your field if it can't get into your body. And what does it mean to get into your body? It means your body heats up
Yeah. Yeah.
and you activate all the circuits in your body and you start to live on that frequency. Hence the less need for food, especially if you're around other frequency people, they start to feed you in the field life force energy. That's the real ascension process, is from the body through the gold energy.
Yeah.
So yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, it's interesting because this image, and I don't want to reiterate it, but this image of a false matrix grid circuitry system that is dissolving through people right now is like the most active thing in the field that I'm witnessing. Um, but it's doing that to create space to bring this online, and it's going to have different levels and layers and forms. But then I'm looking into sort of globally more people that are being able to actualize or hold that frequency. I went through this experience coming up to 2 years ago where I could feel that the gold frequency was sort of gridding in and around the planet. And I think that was an activation that is still in progress for many. And I think there's been incremental doses and waves of that. But yeah, the importance of being able to ground and hold that is so vital, so incredibly vital.
Yeah. Yep. And now we're at a time where we have a choice point around which timelines or timeline we are going to align with.
Mm.
And not just align with, as in, oh, someone's going to lay down the timeline and I'll just jump on board. No, this is an active process of I'm choosing the gold. Doesn't have to be the golden age. We don't know where it's going, right? It's going to have elements of that, but the gold energy, I'm choosing the gold energy. So I'm going to lay down that timeline because the alternative timeline is the AI timeline. And I tell you what, they are working around the clock, literally, because they don't sleep, to embed that timeline. And people are going to, especially if they're unconscious or just, go on with the flow or whatever, they're going to just fall into that by default. Because, like we've just highlighted today, you don't get into the gold timeline without some hardcore stuff
Mm.
to overcome about your life. And so it's an alignment process that's coming for people to make the 3D changes and the choices that are going to align with the timeline of their choice. And it's just choice. There's no right or wrong. If people want to go the tech pathway, that's cool. But a lot of people say to me, oh, when I start to paint what they're lining up for the future, oh, I'm not doing that. No, I don't want a tech future. I'm like, well, what are you doing as an alternative? Because if you don't do anything and take acts of courage and connect with people in that frequency you want to align with, you're going to be sucked into that other current because that's
Or
going
be
to be,
or be straddling.
well, only for a time because you can only straddle for so long. You'll be treading water for a while. And then if you don't consciously choose, and in that will be courage, it's not like, oh, I'm going to make a choice now. It's like, no, there's going to be initiations involved. So you don't get over the line without effort and risk. And that's what I find is very much a trap in the collective mind is that, oh, I'll just choose this and it will happen. And I don't have to take any risks. Sorry, don't work that way. Not my rules. It's the gold rule.
Do you want to speak to a little bit more about these AI type robotic beings? I know you've had an encounter, and I've had probably two encounters in the last couple of years. We've already established that they definitely come from a different galaxy. They have very specific navigation to be able to move through portals and like very strategically drop into material. I mean, I literally had one materialize, well, from what I could see, in my living room, which rattled me because I'd never encountered anything like it. Um, the frequency sounds that it's like a scrambling robotic sound that comes with it. They're very tall, lanky, and they don't, they seem to have an aspect of sentience to them, but they're primarily artificial,
Yeah.
has been my specific experience. They seem like they are hugely watcher energy, like they'll come in and observe and,
Mm,
they don't stay for long.
mm.
Um, but what you are picking up on, and we had a conversation around that some people may have agreements with these and what that might look like in human terms.
Yeah. This is a big topic which I think will evolve over the coming videos. But what I will say is, I think part of this is about uh, respect. We need to respect these beings. And I don't mean accept, I mean respect, because they are highly sophisticated. They know what they want, which is the gold energy, which is creation, life force, which they don't seem to be able to produce themselves. So they have to harvest it from elsewhere. But what they have developed in the absence of that, or even with that, is like abilities that would blow our mind. And they are, yes, largely artificial, but there is an organic component to them because otherwise I wouldn't call them beings. So 100% robotic uh, manifestations, if you like, are not beings to me. A being has its own intelligence. So these have their own intelligence, but yes, they operate as a hive mind like AI does.
Mhm.
But I think the key is that they're coming from a different galaxy. So they're not in our realm of, consciousness right now. Like they're coming from far away. So we're having to collaborate to this kind of foreign entity that is now in our fields, but only in a very small way. But as the AI timeline unfolds, they're going to come in droves, and we need to be prepared because these beings are not our typical reptilians, greys, zetas, insectoids, whatever you like, the things that people talk about from this realm, from this galaxy. They're outside of that. So, healthy respect is required to go, okay, here's a being that's highly sophisticated. I don't know what they're capable of. We don't really. We know they're capable of a lot, but we also have to then recognize what do we have that they don't. We have the gold, and we need to become in our mastery of that energy, which basically means embodiment. Gold frequency mastery means get in your body, fully inhabit your body, and stay there. Then you become really quite untouchable to, relatively untouchable. Nothing's untouchable. But you become very immune to whatever they're going to throw at us. But then we also need group immunity, which is where the community concept comes in. We need to be co living with other people of frequency to uphold that energy as a collective rather than living alone, having to do it alone. There'll come a point where that won't work anymore. And it certainly won't work with these beings when they pop up in your lounge room like they did with you. Very
Scared
unexpected.
the crap out of me.
They're freaking scary, man. Really, really scary because they're very, very fast, like
Yes.
faster than our minds can compute. But yeah, I feel like that's enough to whet people's appetite, and we can go deeper in the next videos.
Yeah, we can just, I mean, we're still understanding the nature of this and the implications of this as it is unfolding. But I truly believe, well, I want to touch on 2 points. One, embodiment is the key, bringing as much of your consciousness back here in this physical body is the mastery of itself. And of course, that can be hard at times if there's fragments of our consciousness. I'm going
Mm.
to completely throw it out there. As we're recording this now, I'm going through a process, at least today, that I don't feel fully here. But on those days, the best that we can do and give ourselves grace and compassion for the times that we may be aspectly AWOL. Um, but that's where we're going to be the most powerful and impactful and sovereign is when we're fully incorporated in.
That's a
And there's,
thought,
yeah, there's
that's
many
a thought.
reasons why that may not be the case. Um, but the other thing that comes to mind as you talk about these
Mhm.
beings is potentially we will get to a greater level of understanding and being able to work not work with them, and I don't mean work alongside them, but just in terms of like being able to navigate as we've done. Well, at least I can speak from my own experience. First encounter you have with a reptilian or a grey, it's like quite confronting, and then all of a sudden you become a bit more attuned to understanding
Yeah.
how to navigate in and around that. I don't
Yes.
think we're at that point now, but I do think that that will become much more apparent.
Yeah. And it's important to, you're right. I think that is coming. And that's why we're bringing this to the conversation about these beings, because other people may have had experience of them. And then we all expand our knowledge. The more they're seen, the more empowered we become with that. But also, it's important that these beings are going to keep us on our toes because, like AI, they're learning constantly at this, like at such a fast speed that we can't really comprehend with our human minds. So they will keep us on our toes, but once we understand their nature and embody more,
Mm.
away we go. But that's a really tall order to say I'm fully embodied in this timeline now. Like I'm not either. No way. I've got so many like connections to other times and places and traumas and things. And this is where I feel like to speed this process up of embodying the gold energy is going to require trauma healing. And speeding that up means healing teams, like teams of people doing healings on individuals or groups of people, because one person alone with their healing powers is not going to be enough and it's going to be too slow. So we are again called to co-create, come together and go, wow, what is possible when everyone's in their lane working with their healing gifts together on a target or a person or whatever it is. Amazing. So we've got to bring that into the 3D as well. And then we're rocking it once we really get that underway, I think.
It really creates an amplification.
Yeah.
Just trying to bring it into a completion phase for now. I
Tricky.
feel like there's so many threads of
Where does it all land? Well, I think it lands with the questions that people have and the things that come to them are, around their experiences of these things we've mentioned today, around the
yeah.
goal, AI beings. I think this is a collective knowledge gathering process. And what I see that you and I are doing this series, along with the people watching, is we're weaving in the golden threads and making a stronger tapestry for this timeline to embed here. So the more people that you share this with, who really get it, who need to hear this information, they get woven into this tapestry of gold. And that's what I've already seen happening in just 2 episodes. And it's really magical. So yeah, maybe that's just where we landed today.
Yeah. So I guess the takeaway is, work with your own golden frequency and whatever comes up in and around that, just, yeah, allow yourself to go through the phases. Obviously, seek support when you feel like it's too much for you to not go out alone. There's many gifted, you know, energy workers who are roaming around the planet that can hold space for that. If you're working, I think the thing that really highlights for me is if you're working towards a divine frequency match, you feel like that's largely at play and coming into fruition as part of that interweaving of the golden frequency, because I think that's a huge component to it. Allow yourself to go to the levels of being able to unearth whatever traumas may be preventing that. And that can be very, very painful. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, also, yeah, seek support where uh, is necessary. So, this jump, I think the only thing that we didn't touch on, there's a date that keeps coming into my mind, which is around the end of January. Um, the end of January, and that seems quite pivotal in terms of people making moves or choice
Yeah.
points. Um,
Yeah. Jump on the timeline that you, of your choice now and get proactive with it in December and January is my take on that. Because I see the same gateway that's open until the end of Jan. So we've got 2 months of weaving this golden tapestry to make it strong and bring in the people that we know who are part of this direction. And then we're set up beautifully for whatever comes next year because it's going to get wild.
yeah, yeah, beautifully said. One thing that comes to mind for me is being able to, for those that may resonate with this, of being partially one foot in either aspect, like, having one foot on either or and oscillating back and forth. I feel like for some people that might be part of the process as they're unstitching or unraveling or unhooking from timelines or people or connections or experiences that are in um, not in alignment or resonance with that, because it does feel like there's a bit of an oscillation that is occurring. But to make a really strong focus to be able to connect with that we're speaking of and what that means for you on a daily basis, even if it's 5 minutes of connection.
Get in your body is all I have to say. Get in your body, or if you can't find the fragments, work with someone like Alisha who can help you weave them back in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
that's
process.
it.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much, A'HaRa, for being here and sharing your personal experience and knowledge and insights and what's coming through for you. I am so grateful for everyone who is tuning in and following this series, and as it develops and unfolds, and what we can share. So, thank you, everyone. Until the next time, get in your body, connect with the the goal frequency and what that has in store for you. Much love. Until next time. Bye.